So, as you all can see, up next I'd like to call Bill Lynch, the co-founder of Jive, for a special keynote.
Hello, thanks. So as it says here, I'm Bill Lynch, one of the founders of Jive. And I'll tell you, what I spent my time talking about today was what I think would be most useful for you guys. I think history of Jive, how we got started, the evolution of our company. We're almost a 12-year-old company. Some of the things we learned along the way, and I love interruptions and questions, so if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask, and I hope there's a lot of questions at the end too. I'm happy to answer anything I can. Of course, now we're a public company, so there's only so much I can really get into, but I'll try to answer whatever I can. So first I thought I'd just briefly talk about what is Jive other than a very cool-looking cinemagram. In case you don't know, so Jive is a social business software company, and we started off a long time ago, and I'll explain the history and everything as a discussion forum vendor, but we very quickly evolved over the last 12 years to a social business software company. So we do employee collaboration, we do partner networks, we do customer communities, either on-premise or in our cloud environments. As I said, we've been around for about 12 years. We have a number of customers, and we just went public last year. And the best way to really see what Jive is to go try it yourself. We recently launched a way for anybody to try it. So if you go to search for Try Jive or go to jivesoftware.com, you'll be able to try it there for your company and give it a shot. So that's very briefly what is Jive, and I'll take you through some of the history now. So you can't do a founder presentation without the obligatory, hugely nerdy founder shot. This is roughly 12, 13, 14 years ago or so. I'm the guy on the left. The smaller dude is Matt Tucker, my co-founder. So we both were friends in high school. We both went to the University of Iowa as computer science students, and we're both really into like tech. And this is the late '90s when when Java was really kind of catching its stride, and especially server-side Java got really hot. And so we started playing around with different website technologies and building open source servlets. And really trying to just, learn a lot about Java ourselves, but also contribute to what we hope was a growing ecosystem of Java server-side components. And that really was what led to a lot of the foundation of the Jive products. Here's a cleaned up version of us from our IPO event. Look a lot better than we do 12 years ago. Matt's not taller than I am over those years. He's just sitting closer. So I'll take you through some of the history here. So we were actually based in New York early on, and little known fact is, I said it's from Iowa. We actually founded the company in Iowa City, Iowa. It's funny, I warmed my heart to see Scott McNeely for 2 seconds because Sun was our very first customer. So what happened was we had this open source project and a variety of different open source projects, and the discussion forum was one of them, and that got to be just kind of more and more popular. Sun, obviously working with a lot of developers, wanted to have kind of a rebuild of their community, their developer community, and so they looked for a new forum vendor. And I think at the time they were using something written in like ASP, something really embarrassing for Sun. So they did some searching, found us, and it was through that process of working with Sun and wanting to, they had a couple of custom features they needed to have built. They obviously had a lot of scale that was required in the platform. We ended up kind of basically rewriting the app. And actually incorporating to do business with Sun. It was an incredibly naive process where they're like, okay, well, we're ready to do business. What's your EIN? And we're like, what? So at the time we didn't Google. I think we Alta Vista'd how to start a company. And quickly realized you become a Delaware Corp and all that kind of stuff. So that was really why we incorporated the company. I love getting the question of like, what was your vision? What was your Doc Brown fall off the toilet, hit your head, vision of where the future was going? Didn't have one. It was very humble, just two guys who really liked technology and wanted to take like a known concept and really implement it really well in server-side Java. So that was Iowa City. We very quickly decided to move to New York. Our spouses and significant others were moving, got into school here, and we had no real ties in Iowa, and so we decided, what the heck, let's move to New York. We crossed the bridge September 1st of 2001, so 10 days later everything turns upside down. But nonetheless, we decided to keep, moving the business forward. We had to find an office space. And it was a very lean time. Like we had our CEO at the time who came and joined us about 6 months after we founded the company. He was in New Haven because his wife was at our school at Yale, and so he commuted into the city. We had a one-bedroom apartment in the West Village, and he slept on the couch 3 days a week. So, it was from that very, very early beginning, we pretty much just focused on the technology, focused on making our first few customers ridiculously happy, working long hours, and just really improving the product as much as we could. And so, we started to attract a lot of tech companies. So once Sun came and found our software and started using it, that was a great reference site. As a startup, that's almost all you can ask for, right? Profitable since day one, viable product, and a really great reference website with powered by Jive at the bottom of it. And every single Java developer that would go to Sun's site would see that. So it was a really, really awesome thing for us. And we, just tried to really make our customers very happy in those first few days. And so Oracle became a customer, IBM became a customer. Basically, those big tech companies that have developer network needs, we really kind of honed our software for that. And from the very beginning, we started focusing on enterprise features. Not, again, so much as a deliberate choice. It just happened to be that the customers we were working with, wanted to pay more for those kinds of things, and we thought it was a more interesting technical challenge. Little do we know how much BS and stuff you have to put up with the enterprise technologies, but I'll get into that later. But, at the beginning, it was just simply doing an LDAP integration and making it so that somebody could plug in their own ways to, add users to the system. So it was, our enterprise-ness, if you will, was sort of set from the early days working with those big customers. We introduced a couple of different variants of the product, started to grow very slowly the number of employees. I think we maxed out our New York office around 12 or 15 or so, and decided, around 2004, what are we going to do with this, right? The spouses and stuff had finished school. There's no real reason to be in New York any longer. And we were starting to make more money, which is a good thing. We were also starting to get hammered by how expensive it is to start a small bootstrap company here in New York. And so the options were suburban New Jersey or suburban Connecticut or somewhere else. And so, long story short, did a big evaluation, decided to move to the West Coast, and that's what led us to, let me just go to this slide real quick first. Decided to go to Portland, Oregon, which is where I live. So we, part of the reason we didn't go to the Bay Area at the time was actually really smart in retrospect. I hope it was anyway, because that was, extremely competitive times for hiring engineers on the West Coast. That was just as Google and Yahoo were hitting their stride, hiring everybody. And again, we were bootstrapped. We had very conservative growth plans. So we thought Portland was kind of a just right kind of size of place and allowed us to grow in a bootstrap fashion, work with a lot of great engineers and talented software people. But we moved the company to Portland and really refactored it. We kind of went back to the drawing board in terms of the product. At the time, mid-2000s, a few things started to get really hot. Blogging got hot, tagging, social profiles, social anything really started to take off. And we sort of faced a decision to make about our product, right? We were getting, great, you guys have discussion forums and you've done this knowledge-based thing in documents. Now we want you to do a blogging kind of app. And we thought, are these things all separate, or is this something that we're going to try to combine into one suite? And so we said, obviously chose the latter, and that's really what led to the formation of the kind of current product as we know it. It started off being called ClearSpace. We simply call it Jive now, but it's really more of a social suite of different kinds of tools. We realized in these years that it's not so much about the technology or the features you have as it is how it's applied to certain use cases or certain solutions. And so we sort of up-leveled the sales, up-leveled what the product could do, started to hire more real functions of a company, like honest-to-God marketing department and sales leaders and all that kind of stuff. Started to grow the engineering team a lot more, and really started to grow the company, but still bootstrapped.
Who were you selling to?
Enterprises. So mostly technology. Yeah, sure. Mostly technology companies was a sweet spot. Mostly because they were just naturally collaborative, a little ahead of the curve. Our emphasis at first was a lot of customer communities, and so a lot of those guys had developer networks and.
But like a tech leader.
I see.
Sales,
as a role.
Development. Marketing.
Usually so a couple different use cases. There's a couple different buyers. VP of support or somebody in the support department would realize this is a great way to deflect cases and have a customer community out there. And then somebody usually in the marketing or technical marketing side would say, hey, it's a website property for us. It's engaging developers, and I want to do that kind of stuff. So yeah.
You were extremely profitable. So did you build a product first and just made sure to start selling it to people in your enterprise?
Yeah. So we. What happened was we did a lot of, we were like Two Dudes Inc. And it was we did a lot of the development of the product and made it viable through that initial engagement with Sun. And then at the moment we incorporated, we actually had money flowing in the door. So technically from day one we were profitable. Kind of cheated a little bit from when we incorporated. We didn't so much go through a kind of a launch and a quiet period and like that. So it was, so then we just pretty much bootstrapped the company and spent what we made, and didn't ever grow beyond our means. So that was the early days until 2007. Yeah.
Interesting to hear you talk about the focus on what people use and do with it, not the features.
Yeah.
That's not a very Bay Area attitude. Do you
I don't know if I agree with that.
Having been a New Yorker?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, I think, well, there's a slide here that I skipped. We learned a hard lesson, which is, it's funny, somebody asked about pricing to the last speaker. As engineers, we could barely bring ourselves to charge more than $1,000 for all-you-can-eat license. We were just, like, it was just so scandalous to charge money for something that was pretty easy, you know, and it started to get more complex, and so we'd have to price a little bit more. But we eventually figured out, like, you know, it's not about, you don't price based on the effort you put into it, right? You're not building a car or something like that. It's the value that a customer has. And so once we kind of understood that, what is the value a business is getting out of the software, and kind of rejigger the pricing based on that. So through that lesson, we, you know, figured out the kind of classic product marketing exercise of the Dr. Scholl's. You know, they can take a piece of foam rubber and repackage it to solve specific pain points and stuff. And so, like, that kind of product, you know, management 101 was a lesson we learned in the mid-2000s, and eventually transitioned from two tech guys to you know, kind of thinking more on the product strategy side. Yeah.
Can you talk about that first deal with Sun and how, like, from 2 Junes came to that, like, just the...
Yeah, I mean, we basically just worked our tails off to get that business. Yeah, we basically just worked our tails off to get that business. I mean, we over-answered every question they had. We, you know, tried to make it, you know...
Was it did you come in through the CEO? Did you come in through
no.
middle management? How do you...
No, I think it was...
Enterprise?
Sure, so... it was organic. I think they found us organically. I mean, we had a small website called coolservlets.com. If anybody here ever had heard about that? Well, you know it because you work at Jive. But they found our program, or our application via just, you know, searches at the time, right? They probably typed in Java-based discussion forum for developers or whatever, and they found us. And so it was just like a website lead. Just came in and we started talking to them, you know, basically just really worked hard for the business, and, you know, partnered with them, and, you know, basically, you know, essentially became part of their development team for a little while as we worked really hard to launch the product. So, that's how they found us. And it was, I think, on the person that we eventually wrote the check was part of their digital marketing team, so they own the website and all the developer interaction.
How many meetings did it take to get that check, to write that check?
We never met them in person. It was all over email, I think. We met them at Java 1, I think, as a thank you. We took them out to dinner, yeah. Crazy. Okay, so let's keep talking. So 2007 was an important year for us because we had a milestone. We kept having more conversations inside of Jive about, man, it'd be great if we could just apply more, you know, push harder on sales, or you know, hire a few more engineers and not be constrained by the amount of money we're making or whatever. And so we, you know, by that point, still a profitable company, had, you know, tons of customers and lots of really successful use of Jive. And so we kind of put word out there that we were looking at investment, and immediately caught the attention of a lot of really great firms. Sequoia was one of the firms that came and talked to us. And, you know, for Matt and I, it was a hugely, honestly, emotional decision to take venture capital funding. It was sort of something we've been very against for a long time, and so that was a big decision for us. And in retrospect, it was a great fit for us because the guys at Sequoia and other kind of VC firms are all former entrepreneurs. We, more than the money, we really wanted the entrepreneurial help to navigate bigger deals, to figure out how to sell the enterprise, you know, in bigger ways, or how to, you know, think about product strategy and challenge us to think bigger and stuff. And so that's really what I consider the modern era of Jive. 2007 was a huge inflection point for us. Started hiring more people. It got more complex, but we also started solving bigger problems, and it was really cool to see the success of our customers use the software, and started getting better references and use cases and all that kind of stuff. And that, you know, the funding followed a couple of years later, did a B and a C round. And, you know, we grew to over 400 people at the mid last year. And in the time, you know, we transitioned our CEO, the guy who was our founding CEO is a great friend of mine, and decided, hey, I'm not the dude to take the company public. And so we reached out to a board member of ours, Tony Zingali, who's our current CEO, awesome guy, super experienced in the software company business. And we IPO'd last year, so that was a really fun process. You know, another kind of big decision for us. You know, what kind of company do we want to be? What do we really want to accomplish? And so that really felt like it fit our goals of becoming an impactful, meaningful software company, and we felt like the IPO was the right step in that direction. So a couple things I thought that'd be useful to bring up about enterprise, and it's good we've had a couple questions about this so far. Like, we've certainly learned a lot about selling the enterprise and building software for the enterprise. And I think that we always talked about it internally as the enterprise wall, and we would look at that as a set of features that honestly we would, like, you know, go up against competitors and say, have they solved these problems? You know, no, they haven't. They're going to have a hard time, and we should emphasize these kinds of things in deals, right? And, you know, it's definitely been painful, especially when somebody demands IE7 support. I mean, I can't tell you the number of debates we have internally about when we can drop IE7. But, you know, it's it's worth it, and it's hard, but it's worth it, and because I think we've seen the positive impact of a lot of our software. But nonetheless, it's a lot of work, and I think if you guys are serious about building software companies to sell to the enterprise, you need to look really carefully at these things. I think the good thing is, from what I've seen over the last few years, it's some of these things are a lot more easy to tackle, right? I think there's a lot more systems or services, and certainly enterprises are a lot more friendly to cloud software. And I guess one of the other thoughts I have is about this transition from on-premise software to cloud. So we've been in business for 12 years. Obviously, there was not really a cloud 12 years ago. So most of what we did was ship it on-premise, and we've been doing a transition ever since of that to more and more cloud-based services. And it's fascinating to see the attitude changes. I mean, we've had some of the gnarliest bank customers or the gnarliest consumer good companies who've just adamantly refused to go on the cloud. And then that was 2 years ago, and they call us up last week, and it's like, let's go, we're ready, right? So it's changing on a daily basis to cloud, and I think I would encourage you guys, for those of you who ship software on-premise and in the cloud, I encourage you to pick one and stick to it, because I think it's hard to support both, and we're kind of going in the direction of more cloud. And I think I probably just spoke to most of these points. So, that's a real brief. I tend to talk fast. That's a real brief history of Jive, a few lessons we've learned from Enterprise, and I'd love to just answer questions or, go ahead.
What were the dynamics that fueled the massive growth, particularly from the customer side? What enabled the rapid signing up of so many customers you said?
We actually did very little marketing for a long time, and I think it was just good word of mouth. I mean, one of the interesting things about us versus our competitors is that we've had this component of our software, which is public communities. And so we can always start a demo with just saying, like, hey, go check out this site or that site, and it's like a public use of Jive. Now, they may be talking to us because they have internal collaboration needs, and then we'll get to that, right? But it's a great kind of way to see our software in action, and we've obviously been spending a lot of time making it easier to try and stuff. But I think that word of mouth and a lot of websites using Try Jive, and one of the things we did is just put in the contract, like, you have to have a footer on the bottom of your page that says, powered by Jive, right? And that would click through to our website. Hey, if they want to negotiate that out, that's something that would cost money, right? So, but that was an important aspect of our marketing campaign for a long time. And, we eventually, hired a real marketing department and stuff. But that was a big way that we pushed on growth early on.
Just a follow-up question. Was there something that gave you guys leverage or made you a must-have for these customers?
So it's interesting because I think industry by industry, sometimes when one company does something, the others follow pretty fast. And so, one of the techniques we had early on, especially obviously in the earliest days on the tech side, was, hey, look, Sun's got this great developer portal. Look at all the traction they're getting with that. Oracle, don't you want the same thing? You need this, right? And for the most part, yeah, they totally agree. They need that kind of stuff. So that was certainly helpful. And we've evolved the product, we've modified the strategy, and that question is always very central. Like, what makes you a must-have? What gives you leverage? And that's an incredibly important question for startups, because without that, it's too easy to replace you. Yeah.
With the recent acquisition of Yammer by Microsoft, do you see that as a threat now that Microsoft might offer Yammer as a part of the Office suite?
We don't see it, so the question is about Yammer acquisition by Microsoft. We don't see Microsoft as any less of a threat than they were, because they had SharePoint. And so the issue with SharePoint, I think, for Microsoft was, it promised a lot, but it wasn't delivering, and they are still on a pretty slow release cycle. And, there's reasons for that. And I think that SharePoint's actually a pretty decent file management system, but they've had a lot of struggle trying to evolve it into something else. It's good IT plumbing, but I think it's a poor social system. We've integrated with it to the extent that customers want to put their files through Jive into SharePoint. But I think that's why they acquired that company, and I don't think they're less of a competitor, obviously, because they acquired Yammer. I just don't think they're any less of a competitor than they were before. So yeah, it's interesting because part of going public for us was, becoming a bigger software company and being able to accomplish bigger things because we compete against Microsoft, Salesforce, all these big companies that are doing social on top of their platforms. Yeah.
Where do you see Jive going in 5-10 years?
$50 billion company, like Apple, something cool like that. I don't know. I mean, I think for us, it's just been it's a set of steps along becoming a more meaningful software company. I think, our employees ask us a lot, to be candid, like, are we going to get acquired, right? And I think for us, we have a very strong passion to grow a meaningful software company. And that's really what we're focused on. Yeah.
Eucalyptus Systems does on-premise cloud. So what is your definition of a cloud?
On-premise cloud?
Yeah. So, for instance, Cornell University.
My definition of the cloud is not that.
Well, it's one of the same thing, though, actually.
I guess our definition of cloud is when you buy Jive and you have it on the cloud, we run it. It's our server, and we integrate with your SAML endpoint or whatever, right? We run it. And so, I know companies that have an on-premise cloud. What they mean is they have a virtualized data center and they have some isolation of that, and there's probably APIs on top. And so, that's an interesting way to run the software that we would distribute. So we've looked at some of those techniques and done some of those things when our software is installed on-premise. In fact, I could probably talk at length about the evolution of Jive as a software package over the years. Having people rip it apart is a really hard thing to prevent in the enterprise. And thankfully, cloud is kind of a long-term problem or way to solve that problem. But that's how I would define it. Yeah.
I got two questions. You said you reversed an acquisition. Who was it and what was the price?
Are you kidding me? I can't answer that question. The early one. Oh, yeah. I'm just like, again, we're acquisition. I can't comment on that.
Why did you not want to take
Was that this? That was this one, right? Yeah. Well, that was, so it's not important who it was. It's actually a company I don't think even exists anymore. The issue was when we had just decided to leave New York. And we had made plans, and we got to go pick a city, and then this acquisition offer came in, and it complicated everything because we had plans, and now it's like, we need to consider this. It's a serious offer. And what does this mean? And I think it was just a period of time in Jive's history where it was important for us to figure out what do we want to do, right? How committed are the founders? How committed is the CEO? What do we really want to do? How much more risk do we feel like we're willing to take on? And that just made us, really kind of re-answer those questions, affirm our decisions, and then move on. So
with that in hand, it would have been easy, I think, to raise money. Why did you not want to raise VC money at that stage, really?
That was 2003, 2004. I think the environment, I think bad terms. And I think we just decided we didn't need it. I think I'm actually really glad in retrospect we didn't pour the gas on what we had back then. I'm glad we waited a little bit longer until we had a better product and more customers to reference before we did it. So.
The last question is price point. So how much did you sell your software to Sun? What the price point of Sun, and how did you evolve over time?
Boy, I think Sun was structured more as a we call them SALs, like basically a package of work. They licensed the software, but I think they got a perpetual license for it. I think for the most part, that was more of a professional services engagement. They kind of hired us for a little while to work on the software, help us bootstrap the company. And it was after that point we sort of said, okay, let's actually license this. And it was pretty cheap. I think it was I don't know, a few tens of thousands of dollars for a full license or something like that. It was really inexpensive, so, yeah.
And it kept growing?
It kept growing, yeah. Yeah, we license the software now based on page view for our public community products and based on user license for internal use. Yeah, it kept growing. Yeah.
I guess you touched on this a little bit before, but once you started hiring formalized teams around sales and things like that, what would you say were the most effective ways of minimizing the sales cycle for you specifically?
It's a great question, because enterprise sales are long, and I think one of the things is to, look at your sales process and analyze all the steps that could be more automated as much as possible, right? So, for example, simple things like, how many times have you gotten the same question? Well, make sure that's documented, make sure all the reps can answer those questions really easily, right? Make sure your demo situation is like really tight, right? Good salespeople know how to move a deal along. They know how to bring in people, answer objections, close it down, move on, right? So I think finding good salespeople, frankly, help move the process along as well. But I think, those were some of the techniques that stand out, I think. I think just automating as much as you can to the extent possible in the actual process. Yeah.
How do you see the intersection of the consumer collaboration platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, what have you, with the enterprise platform?
It's been incredibly helpful as a conversation starter, right? So it's like, what is Jive? Well, Facebook? Okay, so it's like Facebook, but for a private company inside of your network. Oh, okay, I get it, right? So having that from our consumer lives, that understanding helps people as a basis to understand why putting Jive in the context of their work. And the conversation is always about, super sucks to find stuff at work, and it's much easier on Google. And so I think to the extent that the consumer networks have existed, has certainly helped the understanding of what our software can do internally. And also, they're important extension points for us as well. I mean, we integrate with Facebook, we integrate with LinkedIn on a sign-up kind of basis, and so we have actual product features that work on a public community-facing point of view. So I think a lot of people kind of understanding how a social system should work is based on those, so it's been helpful. Yeah.
Is there a moment back when Yammer launched and I guess that sort of sense reaction through the company? Was that an important moment?
I mean, there's been a lot of competitors we've had, and so I think Yammer's a good competitor, and we respect what they've done. And I think that they probably went purely cloud earlier than most people, and so I wouldn't say there was anything directly we did differently once they launched. I think we had been sort of already kind of planning more cloud and more like hosted infrastructure and stuff already. So I think it took a little bit longer for them to gain traction because I think a lot of enterprises weren't ready for that. And it's only been recently that I think that balance has tipped and benefited both of our companies. Yeah.
So, how do you send away clients that are not good clients?
Oh, I love that question. How do you fire a customer, right? Or how do you
in 2007, you probably had like lots of people knocking on the door saying, client community.
Well, it has really nothing to do with client communities. I guess like in any evolution of a company, you change your strategy or you evolve your strategy. And there's people who bought your product in 2004 and used it for 2004 reasons that aren't valid anymore in 2007 or whatever, right? And you just have to be honest with them and be really upfront about where you're going. I think if you deprecate things, you need to give people notice, especially in the enterprise. It's a lot more important because people tend to spend more money on your solution. They tend to have more people on it. So, you can't. We sometimes envy what consumer-based companies can do because they can just turn stuff off and who cares? So we have to have a bit more of a process to deprecate things or move customers or transition them off older things or older features. But I think just being really upfront with our customers about where our strategy is and transitioning the ones that are no longer a fit. It's an important piece of health. I mean, it's almost cliche to say you admire Apple for something. I admire Apple greatly because they're willing to throw things away and stop doing things. It's a consumer-based company for the most part. But I think there's some important lessons there to learn about. They're just brutal on the prioritization of what's important to them right now, and they have a lot of strength when it comes to saying we're not going to do that anymore. And I really think that's a great model to follow. Is really question what's the most important thing and stay focused on that, because staying focused and staying really tight with what you're doing is really, really important as you grow a startup. Yeah.
What is your best source of marketing leads? And do you employ any marketing automation or sales pipeline management tools?
I think organic leads tend to be still the best coming in from Google searches or whatever. We do typical things like trade shows. We do marketing events. We do webinars. We have a really fun conference called Jive World every year that we've done now 3 or 4 times in a row. And so, those help raise awareness. But I think that's, usually when organic leads come in, it's because, hey, I'm really interested. Like, tell me more, right? And so those have typically been better leads. And we use Eloqua, I think, and a few other Salesforce as a backend. And we have all that kind of stuff out, and it works really well. Yeah.
You have a partner channel which implements Jive in the company. How does that work?
Partners. It works in that. You buy Jive, maybe you have a need you need to write an extension to versus one of our APIs. You need to do maybe a custom theme. You want to do maybe an SSO endpoint we haven't seen before, whatever it is. So there's technical partners that help people implement specific things. There's if you go to market partners that kind of bundle it with their solution. So partner channels are a really important thing as a company gets bigger, and I think I probably would have focused on that stuff a little earlier, because it really helps a lot. And it forces a software company, I think, to focus on the right fundamentals, especially if you become a platform. You have the right APIs. Are you enabling your partners in the right way? And it really helps you scale a lot faster, I think. So that's in a nutshell how it's working. Any questions? Yeah.
Are you guys experimenting with freemium models and ways to kind of penetrate the enterprise at lower levels and bubble up?
Yeah. We've seen a big shift in that top-down sales motion of going and talking to the CIO, CTO, whoever, versus the organic growth op. And we've definitely put a lot of focus and product attention on that organic growth op. We've always found our product, the feedback we get is that it's easy to use. There's no manual needed. People just kind of get it. It's a very natural way of working, which is great, right? But I think getting that into more people's hands from a grassroots point of view has been what we've been focusing on recently with a lot of our product development. So, as I mentioned earlier, anybody can go and try Jive right now for 30 days. And It's free to use for 30 days, and then if you want to use it, it's relatively inexpensive to get going for a team. And I think from there, it's sort of for us that it puts more emphasis on the product of being able to spread and add more value across teams. I think one of the great things about social is that it works best when you spread it among teams and departments, and so the product sort of naturally spreads well. Yeah, we've definitely been doing a lot with that. Any questions? Is that it then? All right.
One last.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah.
What's your usual sales cycle now?
Honestly, I don't know if I'm allowed to say specifics on that, believe it or not. But I think, in general, it ranges, right? So typically it's a quarter or two is typically what it ranges, and it again, it just depends. I mean, we could be talking to somebody who came in via Try Jive and is really ready to go and can kind of initiate that much faster. There's been some companies, as you can imagine, we have sell to banks, right? And they have a lot of security checklists we need to go through and people we need to talk to verify that we've met all those enterprise wall things. And, so that stuff takes time. And, talking about speeding up the sales process, having those things ready to go helps a lot in that process. So, that's typically what it is. I think it's pretty common for a lot of software companies. And it's just, we could have everything super ready to go, but I think there's a lot of people that need to make decisions in enterprises, right? And so it tends to slow down a little bit. Yeah.
In the room, we actually have a lot of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, giving a lot of great advice to them based on what you've learned. In terms of today, where cloud is out, mobile, what would you say is some good advice for aspiring entrepreneurs trying to sell their enterprise?
I mean, I think you need to, I think, having some way to address their needs from an enterprise wall, so back to this list or whatever, you're going to get asked these questions, right? And I think it's important to get there, and so tackling these things and having a plan, even a roadmap is okay in some of these cases. But, I think there's a lot, the good thing is that I think there's a lot of change being demanded and happening in the enterprise, right? I think there's more and more companies we run into who standardize on Chrome or have Macs, and that's great for everybody in this room. But you will get the old crusties who still use IE7, and that's just a fact of life. And so, you could decide I'm not going to sell those guys. That's fine. Make those decisions and try to get that done early. But have a plan for this stuff. Think about who owns the data. Think about where things are stored. Have some be able to answer questions about where is your data center SAS 70 Type 2. All those kinds of things will come up, and having some sort of plan to answer those things will help the time.
What keeps you up at night in terms of dealing with the company?
Dealing with the competition. I think going back to fundamentals, have we focused enough on being a must-have? I think if you look at our competitors, I think they all have these incumbencies to protect. It's an email system or a CRM system or a file system or whatever it is, and that's leverage, right, for them. So I think we are simultaneously trying to build our own leverage as well as become a must-have, and that's it keeps us on our toes, and that's probably what keeps us up the most. So, yeah.
It comes with a full cycle to being successful. Would you do it again, or would you just go beyond?
I would do it again because I think it'd be a shame to waste what I've learned and I've worked with some awesome people, and I really want to keep working with them. So, I'm very committed to Jive. It's a lot of fun, and we're gonna do some cool things. But I think it'd be a shame not to reuse that again. But I would never take 6.5 years to go to funding again. That just never would happen. I think I'd do a year and then figure out if it's go or no go, right? And who knows? But I think it'd be fun to try something else again in the future. Yeah.
Do you have I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have experience to sell to the government because you're dealing with the enterprise?
Do I have experience selling to who?
Government agencies.
Oh, government. Government's interesting. Again, something I could probably talk about for a long period of time. I think it's tricky. I think it's a different sales cycle. Different kinds of reps are needed to negotiate the different kinds of agencies and stuff. I think you can definitely make your life a lot harder if you go into the most secure agencies because you'll have this phrase called air gap, which really sucks. It's they have servers that are physically air gapped from the outside world, and it's well, can your software run on air gap servers? And that sucks. So I think you just have to decide, kind of back to product marketing 101. Who's my buyer? How's the software going to be deployed? What are their needs? And do I match that? If so, go. Yeah. I mean, I think enterprise has helped us sell the government, but it's a unique beast for sure. Yeah.
I would just like to comment on this lady's question, being that I do work for government, and I mean, I think that you are speaking about the technical aspects of the challenges that face you as a software company working with, trying to work with government, but on the other side, there's also the other challenges of working with government, which are that it's so hard in many agencies to be ready to open up information, even within an organization. And please nobody quote me on this, but that's that's the other side, is that I have looked into this kind of thing for a long time because I feel it's so important to be able to share information more easily, but it's really hard to get that message through to executive management.
Okay, one more question. Time for one more.
Bill, congratulations, but maybe what would be very interesting for everyone is, how do you balance your career, your business, your friendship, founders, and personal life?
You don't. No, it's definitely tough. I mean, you give up a lot to do something like this, but you also gain a tremendous amount. I mean, I have some really, really good friends at Jive, and really great people I've met through the years. So it's definitely been worth it. And my wife's super tolerant. She actually has her own startup too. So and we have small kids too. So we're a little insane. But ESPN or something. But yeah, it's definitely hard to balance. But I think you have to get some help along the way.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for all the great advice.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Up next, we're going to have Jed from Delphix present. While he's getting set up, I'd like to call up Ian Ellis to make